There's a saying in the beer world. There's two types of brewers. There's someone that has to make beer and gets to sell it, and then there's a brewer that gets to make beer and has to sell it.
Thank you for listening to Serves You Right. My name is Andrew, and if this is your first time tuning in, I've spent 20 years in the hospitality, that's the restaurant and bar world, done everything from dishwasher to GM, and this show is all about figuring out who are those people who've done something exceptional or inspirational in the hospitality world, find out what got them there, what makes them tick, and share their story. In that 20 years, I've done a lot of studying beer. I say that, that's probably more accurately, I've done a lot of drinking beer. And I bring that up because today we are talking to Brian Grossman, the Chief Brewer of a little brewery called Sierra Nevada, if you've heard of them. It's a really fantastic conversation. We get to talk about all things brewery, what got him into the business, what gets him fired up, what his philosophies on hospitality are, and so much more. So without any further ado, here's Brian, and thank you for listening to Serves You Right. Brian Grossman, thank you for coming on Serves You Right.
Nice to meet you and be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm as excited. So I went back through my notes and I thought we could start this off. I wanted to tell you a story about how Sierra Nevada showed up randomly in my advanced sommelier course, if you're okay with it.
Yeah, great.
So, wild time. I'm a newly married man. I get into the advanced somm course. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it's in Dallas, if I remember correctly, because I didn't write that part down. This has been probably 8 years. So we load up everyone in the van, start driving, van breaks down. We end up having to take my wife's car, and so we were going to travel as a little unit. We have a Great Dane and a couple cats. We had to rearrange things because she has a Toyota Yaris, so we're barely packed in there.
With a Great Dane.
With a Great Dane. Oh yeah, we made it. It's about a 12-hour drive. So I go to the course, and if you've never been, it's a 2-day course taught by Master Somms, and it's broken into different segments. There's like champagne service, but they also have a rotating, like always some other type of beverage. And this year it was breweries and craft brewery and how to fit them into different wine and cocktail menus. And so Rich Higgins, one of the only Master Somms that's also a Master Cicerone, was there teaching it. And I still remember he's going through, the value of getting new, exciting products and, what you need to know as a somm on the floor to educate your guests. And then he kind of stops. He's like, though, there's all these people pushing all this new product. You know what one of my favorite beers is? Highest quality. You can depend on it. It is always tried and true. He said, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. Like wherever you get it, whether it's on draft, whether it's in bottle, it is one of the best beers you can find. And it's just mind-blowing how they do it and at the volume they do. So it's one of those things where I wrote it down and it's like, it's good to know. And he was like, yeah, he's got a point. Never knew I'd be talking to you, but here it is. I thought I'd share that, 8 years later.
I don't have I get asked this question a lot, which is, do you remember your first Sierra Nevada beer? Do you remember your first beer? And, I don't, to be quite honest. I do have a picture of my first legal beer with my father, but I do have probably my favorite pale ale story.
Sure, bring it on.
And this is when I was finishing up school. I was running our self-distribution company. And as part of that, I did some training with an AB house, I did some training with an independent house, and I did some training with the Miller Coors house on just how these different philosophies worked when it came to the beer distribution. And, the world of beer, as you can imagine, is large, and there's thousands and thousands of different breweries and thousands of different beers, and it's, I wanted to make sure I was sort of educated on who else, what other products were in the market. So I decided for 1 month I was not going to drink any of our beers whatsoever. And I was just going to drink, other brewers' beers and widen my palate. And so I get to about the end of the month and I was, it was a Friday night. And I wanted to have, a couple of beers. And I go in my fridge and I drank my last other brewer's beer. And all I had left was pale ale. And I was like, what, it's been a month. I achieved my goal of widening my palate. And I remember pouring this beer into a glass, proper glass, and drinking it. And I actually called my dad, and I was like, I forgot how good this beer is. And it was truly one of those aha moments. And sort of the analogy that I make is, when you drive a Ferrari every day, sometimes I don't want a Ferrari, but sometimes you don't appreciate what you've got every single day, and it's like this beer is so good. And it was one of those aha moments of going back, and it's like and it still is like an old friend, when you order it in the pub, it's just like, yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. Funny enough, I'm also doing a little research for a thing I'm doing on the Manhattan. Philip Green wrote a book on the history of the Manhattan, and he's talking about the progression and evolution of how we use different words in cocktails. And he has a story about, he saw a sign that said $5 martinis. He's like, great. Goes in there, says, I'll take a classic dry gin martini, no vermouth. They're like, oh no, those are tin. It's like, they're like fake martinis. Yeah. The next thing he says is, I ordered a Sierra Nevada and I never regretted it. It's like, so it shows up in a lot of places, but yeah. What is it about Sierra Nevada? Or maybe a better entry place to that is, what do you do? Where did you find your position in Sierra Nevada?
Yeah, so I get to work with some of the most passionate people in the industry. I get to work with a team that is just as detail-oriented, I guess, as I am, or we've been our entire career. So I started out scrubbing open fermenters when I was 15 at Chico Brewery, and worked my way through our cellar department, and then brew house side, and then filtration, and then into packaging, and then sort of just brewery and general brewery support per se, and then actually went into guest for a bit as well as I started our customer experience department at that point in time, so tours, and then later got the restaurants as well, and then started to design North Carolina, and I moved out to North Carolina with the team, of course, in August of 12. So I was plant manager out here, and then my current, I say I go where I'm needed. So my current job is a Chief Brewer, and I am involved I get to work with the technical brewing teams, the innovation teams, our quality teams, our sensory teams, our food safety teams, our microbiological teams. We just started a co-packing operation as well, where we're able to make both beer and non-beer products. So that's been a whole lot of fun. So we get to make a bunch of the non-alcoholic beers that we're doing as well, which requires a different sort of skill set and technique, as well as some of the new cutting edge, both inside of beer and near beer as well, which I won't go too far into, but sure, I still get to do a bit of that.
No, I'm sure there are all sorts of experiments and fun things you can't tell us about, but I am excited to hear a little bit about kind of your foray into the low and no space, the things you can tell me about, because that is a huge movement, and it's something that's really been exciting to see people in my generation and people younger than me kind of embrace that like more mindful consumption angle. So yeah, can you tell me a little bit about how those are made and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So there is, as you were just saying, there is a push domestically now. There's always been a larger acceptance. If you look at our European neighbors, they, depending upon the country, of course, anywhere between, let's say, 8 to 15% or so sales would be non-alcoholic. We're quite not there in America yet, so we're just now getting sort of our larger acceptance of these low to no alcoholic beers. And depending upon your style of making beer, there's multiple ways of making non-alcoholic beers. There's maltose negative yeast is one philosophy, where you actually do not convert the maltose sugar into carbon dioxide and alcohol, or you convert a very, very low amount of that, and for clarity, less than 0.5% ABV is what's needed to be considered non-alcoholic. It's different than a 0.0 beer, of course. And then there's other forms where you actually do a distillation method, where you remove the alcohol from a full fermentation process, which can also remove some unique aroma components of those beers. And you are stripping away, obviously, alcohol to make it less than 0.5. And then you've got a sort of a stuck fermentation, or a beer that really didn't begin to ferment, to not go above that 0.5% ABV as well. So those are your main paths of going for non-alcoholic production. We tend to go with what we have in our Trail Pass products, the maltose negative path. So we're not converting the maltose sugars nearly like you would with a standard yeast strain.
Now, when you don't convert those sugars, how do you keep the beer from becoming like being sweet? Because you'd presume that you do kind of need to convert some.
So there's lots of questions there.
I'm a simpleton, so please just put up with the simple questions.
I don't need to get into the full technical talk, but alcohol in general is sweet on the palate. So when those sugars are converted into alcohol, it generally already retains some of that sweetness on the palate. So when you're not converting those sugars, that sort of sweetness is there. But to your point, you can actually be overly too sweet as well. And the other point that I want to bring up is actually on the food safety side of things, because those sugars are still present. You need to make sure that nothing can grow in your product because it doesn't have any protections which you would from like pH or obviously alcohol. But what you can do obviously is pasteurization is a big thing for canned non-alcoholic product, because it can go through a tunnel pasteurizer and make that product safe.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. The thing that I often find missing when I'm trying to build non-alcoholic cocktails, because I'm more on the cocktail side of my day-to-day, is that added like mouthfeel from alcohol. But I guess that is a good point, because it is usually perceived as kind of sweet. And so if you have that sweet base, you're saying something that's very simple, but it's blowing my mind. I love it. Sorry to interrupt. We will get right back to Brian and Andrew. But if you could, take a moment and hit subscribe. If you don't, you might miss out on all the cool people I've got coming on, and I would hate that. All right, right back to the show.
I mean, that's when you look at designing a beer, right? I mean, you do, or a product or a cocktail, whatever it is, a lot of times you start with the end in mind first, right? It's like, what am I really trying to get in this glass? And then you can reverse engineer it a bit as well. Beer is a little bit more difficult than a lot of other products. You know, we are dealing with more raw material inputs on there, so it's you don't normally happen to fall into a great recipe. Let's just say there's a bit more of a, here's what I'm trying to get at, and then the teams will reverse engineer those back.
There's an old saying I remember coming across, and I forget where in my wine studies, because I went the Somm route too, came across it, but it was God makes wine, but man makes beer. Does that ring true to you? Or?
I've heard variations of those sayings. So one of my distributor trainings I was referring to was in a very prominent wine area, and the other saying that you'll hear a lot of is it takes a lot of great wine to make great beer.
See, I've heard it the other way around. See,
it goes the other way around.
When
too.
I was in Lodi, they were like, it takes a lot of beer to make good wine. And it's like, okay, yeah.
So I mean, so there's a lot of mutual respect between each other. And think about being a field worker, and you're out in the field picking grape all day long. The last thing you want when you're done with your shift is a glass of wine. You want a cold beer, So there's plenty of time.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of times where brewers will get home and say, you know what, I've been in beer all day.
It's all I smell. It's all I do. Yeah.
And there's a very different engagement, when I'm looking for just a really nice relaxation, I will tend to go with a glass of wine, because to me it's less work. It's more of just an enjoyment of the actual liquid in the glass. I'm not trying to analyze and troubleshoot every little aspect of it. To me, it is much more of I want to talk to my wife and just relax. So I'll pour a glass of wine, versus if I'm having a beer, it's a little more like, okay, I get what they did, or what's going on here.
Funny enough, I agree with you entirely, but it's exactly opposite for me. Like, when I'm at home, I cannot drink wine. Unless we have like sparkling for like a party or something like that. But I'm like, I don't want to think about wine. I've talked about wine all day. I want a beer. Yeah. So exactly the same. I would wonder, because I know a lot of people listening, because a lot of my audience is servers, bartenders, people in the restaurant industry, and I am sure in every city in the U.S. there is that one like brewery or that local spot that maybe you see, okay, they do have some positions, and maybe it is some of the like beginning positions like you mentioned. Knowing that you've worked in hospitality too, where would you say there's overlap, and would you recommend someone in hospitality join a brewery? Like, is it a job that there's similar personalities? Is there like a personality that would excel in the brewery world that may not do as well in hospitality? Like,
You are part of the brewery world being in hospitality. You are our last line of defense. So, me and my team, we've done everything we possibly can to get you that beer as fresh as we possibly could, made correctly, just perfect. And then all it takes is a dirty glass, someone with a bad attitude, a dishwasher that wasn't paying attention to the plate that came out, the expo person that thought good enough was good enough, the bar back that is throwing the chicken wing plate in with the wear and the wrong, high temp dishwashers that don't use the right detergents. I mean, there's all those things that break down our foam quality, head retention. So to me, everyone that the last person that touches the beer, so that server.
We are all on Team Sierra Nevada. We just are not on the payroll.
Yeah, I mean, but you are making and breaking everything. I mean, to the bar that doesn't clean their draft lines correctly, you're ruining everybody's experience by doing that. So the way that I describe hospitality on site, because obviously we've got a lot more control of our own teams on site, is I call it the ands versus the buts. And what I mean by that is we live in where I'm at currently is in Western North Carolina. We have these beautiful Appalachian Mountains. We've got the Blue Ridge Parkway. We have downtown Asheville with this huge food scene. We've got, I don't know how many breweries now, and we've got just this, we've got the Biltmore Estate. We've got all these really great, positive tourist attractions. And I want to be part of that conversation, or I want to be, because who do you trust more than anyone is your friends, right? When somebody goes to a visit somewhere, it's not a commercial, right? It's like, okay, I went to Western North Carolina. I saw, the Blue Ridge Parkway. I saw, it's beautiful, of course. I saw the leaves changing, but then I went to Sierra Nevada, and that's where I always tell our teams it starts at our front gate. And the analogy they make with everybody is that of going to school. When you start out in school, everybody's got an A, right? No one's done anything wrong. Everything is good to go. And as that person, that guest drives in the property, the first thing they see is the work that my ag team did, or my natural resource team did, right? The grounds are nicely landscaped, everything is leaf blown, it's put together the best that it can, it's showing itself the best that it can. And then when you park at the brewery, that walk in from the parking lot in the front door, is their trash picked up? How well are we put together? Was there a parking attendant? How well did they do that? And then that first interaction that someone generally has is with the host or hostess, and that a lot of times is your entry-level position, but they are the one that is making and breaking that experience for that guest right away. Then you go into, obviously, the server interaction, and then the food quality, and refiring a burger or something like that is not a big deal, but it's that interaction that we have, that guest recovery that we have with them is a big deal. So when I say it's the ands versus the buts, the saying is, I went to Sierra Nevada, the brewery is beautiful and they're the nicest people, and the food quality was the level that I was expecting, because everything communicates is what we say. Doesn't matter what it is, everything communicates. So it's and versus I went to Sierra Nevada, the brewery's beautiful, but they did this, or but they didn't do that. And that to me is where you start losing your grades in school, right? Oh, only got that walkway in wasn't leaf blown right. I got a B on that, and then the host or hostess, was off or whatever it is, and I got a C on that, and that's the grade that you get. So if everything is an A the whole time, when that person goes back home to wherever, Texas, take your point, how was your trip to Sierra Nevada? It's like, oh man, and then, hopefully that is a positive aspect, and that's how we build our brand. So to me, that also happens in bar across the nation, when it's like, oh man, imagine, I put this, beer that we put our love and soul into, and the glass comes out, and it's a shaker pint that's got nucleation points all over the side because it's been stacked 1,000 times, and it's been in the same dishwasher with your detergent that's needed to break down the lipid content of, blue cheese.
Yeah.
So beer clean glasses and that attention to detail to me is everything.
Yeah. No, we call it dropping the ball the last inch. Yeah. Just like you made it all the way to the goal, and then you just dropped it right before you crossed the finish line. You spend all this time making the soup in the restaurant, and then as you drop it off to the guest, you backhand them instead of doing open face serving. It's like, oh, okay. We're so close, but
I mean, that's how teams work.
Yeah.
And that's how teams work, is it's an all or nothing type of an environment.
Yeah. So I guess running the hospitality like you did, has that informed the way that you brew? Is it just kind of informed the way you lead your team?
I think inspiration should and can come from anywhere. So you're going to have, you might get, brewers, or we're flavor people. I mean, that's what we are, is flavor people. So the idea of, beer as food is real. So depending upon where your inspiration comes from, it might be one of our brewers or me or whoever it is, or a quality person to make a difference. They ate a dish somewhere and it was this unique flavor pairings, and it was the inspiration came from that, like, oh man, I always thought about messing around with this. Or there's a farmer that's making a crop of something and it's like, oh man, have we thought about messing around with that? And there's no real purpose other than just exploration, fun, which is the purpose, and just figuring out what's going on. And then there's the other side, which is here you're seeing targeted growth in this area, which is great, we should play there too. So you need to innovate both ways. So you need to have a very calculated, innovation side, as well as a very, I would say, less calculated. It's just how you prioritize what's going on at that point in time is where you come from. So we'll write down ideas constantly.
You'll have to, to make the accountants happy, and you got to make the artist happy too. You can't just have one or the other sort of thing.
And that's actually a great segue as well. When I talk about beer, a lot of people think of beer as just art and science, but to me, it's the triangle, which is art, science, and then the third pillar, which is fun. And that's just as important as all of those, because you can taste that inspiration, you can taste that passion, you can really get like, okay, they took their time and got this one just right. You need all three of those for that to happen.
I think that is actually a really good entry point, because I did want to ask you, I'm really curious to see what you think about this. There are a lot of craft breweries out there. There are a lot of people that have done interesting things, but I mean, I feel like Sierra Nevada does hold kind of a special space. You guys have been around for 45 years. You kind of helped start the craft brewery and the home brewery, everything. I mean, you were the OGs. Like, is there something about the DNA of the company, the way you do things, that gave you that staying power? Or do you guys do something different? Yeah. I'm sure you see a lot of different places, but
right on the label, and it's purest ingredients, finest quality.
Yeah,
that's
I was gonna say family owned and argued over was my other guess. Yeah.
No, it's well, that's
yeah.
There's always been a calculated why. What is the purpose of what we're doing? We have this weird obligation, so we get to stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before us, right? I mean, there's so many great brewers that came before us, and there's so many great brewing scientists that came before us that got us the research to where we're at today, right? So you do need to really respect the past and honor the past, I should say. And then who we work with today, we are still, as we all know, alcohol right now is having a little bit of an impact on sales, is referring to the success of low to no alcohol type products, which we are still actively pursuing and doing. But we need to make sure we are putting out, we as brewers today are putting out products that represent both the best that we have to offer, as what we've learned from those behind us, and advancing our craft and our art forward. And then the third thing that we need to do is inspire the next generation, because if there is a focus or the lack of focus on those attention to detail on brewing science and brewing raw material inputs and sustainable agriculture practices, because of that, we're never going to be able to make beers that we want to in the future, and we're never going to have the drinkers that are inspired to go find those beers, because if we lose that passion, I think it's going to go sideways. So to us, it's always been the why.
I like that a lot. And I feel like I asked that question hoping to find some like secret hidden sauce. It's like asking a really like world-class chef, like, what is it that makes this dish so good? It's like, you start with good ingredients. It makes sense, but yeah,
you start with good ingredients and people that care.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing. And Sierra Nevada, we're good enough is never good enough. I mean, I have a whole team. All of us have that passion. Everyone cares. That's why that's our secret sauce, is everyone cares.
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, from what I gather in this movement of kind of low, no, a little bit more sustainable lifestyles and healthier choices, I think a lot of the people that are consuming less are maybe not fully abstaining, but it seems like consuming less but better seems to be like a theme that I hear a lot of. And in that respect, I wouldn't think that Sierra Nevada had a ton to worry about. So
I agree with you. We are tending to see the same thing. People are drinking less but better. You still need that new legal drinker coming in to look, because as drinkers or customers age, they tend to consume less alcohol, but to your point, at a higher quality, so they do drink less but better. So how do we index on that person? But you still need that first part of the lifestyle. So when that person does become legal drinking age, we want to hopefully be there with a offering. If it is non-alcoholic, if it is low, great. We just need to start with that person's journey. But yeah, I won't say we're resistant to everything at all.
yeah.
We still have to play business too, and we still need to compete like everyone else does as well.
Well, I mean, the good thing about Excel is it's nice when the arrow goes up and to the right. So it makes everyone happy. And I think, Sierra Nevada, the fact that you've had to expand and add on the second location, I obviously don't know your P&L, and don't know your numbers or financials, but I would assume you're doing decently. How much beer do you all brew?
Yeah, we're over 1 million barrels of beer, actually.
That's a lot. It's a lot of beer to be in charge of, yeah.
And then we've got our non-alcoholic hop splash line, as well as our non-alcoholic or less than 0.5 trail pass line. Those low to nose, and like I said, more coming out soon, which I won't get into. But we also saw a move to premiumization with things like our Pilsner. Everyone was asking for a cheap Pilsner. I want a Pilsner, but I want it cheaper. And we went the exact opposite way. We said, no, if we're going to make a Pilsner, we're going to make a Pilsner we're extremely proud of. And how you do that is actually a premium pill. So a little bit more time and detail-oriented work went into that one than a lot of people think. But we're seeing a lot of success, and that's actually served in an 8.4 ounce can, because I was really looking for that 45 degree target temperature finished consumption, and larger pour sizes tend to warm and degas. So I was really looking for a higher CO2 content with that sharpness, part of the flavor profile, and a big part of that is temperature that's consumed at. So hence the 8.4 size, so you don't actually have your beer warm.
If you had to guess, and if you don't know the exact numbers, that's fine, because I didn't give you a heads up I was going to ask this, but like rough estimate, what kind of is the breakdown of the different Sierra Nevada products? Because I would assume that Pale Ale is probably the lion's share, just because, or no. See, I'm already wrong. I drink a decent amount of the little hazy thing at home, so that's okay.
So
yeah,
hazy little thing is about 45% of what we make now.
That's awesome. It's awesome, and it fits perfectly into my fridge up front. So kudos on that.
And then, we loop our seasonals together. So that's actually 4 SKUs, obviously, but it's actually 1 SKU when it comes to retail. So our seasonal program, and then Pale Ale and Torpedo, are respected under there. And then Pilsner is just launching. Our West Coast is just launching right now as well. And we've got obviously our supporting brands. Porters, our stouts that are obviously not done on large scales anymore, but are done more DTC. And then we've got some of our small fun projects. Friends of the Family is a new club that we just launched, which is a pretty fun one. That's our exclusive bottle club, if you want to call it that. That lets us play around a little bit more barrel-aged stuff and a little bit of a different flavor profile for us to go play around with, which is super fun. And then we have a wood age program as well, and our tap rooms do a bunch of one-offs because we're always exploring.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it keeps it fresh, so that like the ones that take off, you can be like, oh, maybe this should become a little bit more. Then maybe it'll end up percolating up to join the year-round offerings, sort of thing.
It's a good feedback loop. In Chico, we have 2 bars. We have our restaurant bar, and then we have what we call a brew house bar, which is a little more focused on our innovation type beers. And then we've got North Carolina, we actually have the same sort of setup, but our barrel room bar is what we're calling it, is just getting some of the new R&D stuff on it right now. But having both restaurants, and then in Chico, like I was saying, I used to run our distribution company there. I no longer do that, but we also then have a little market segment test with our own, self-distribution that we can get some pretty quick feedback as well. But I'll quickly point out Western North Carolina and Northern California aren't the rest of the world. So your hometown hero love, your products sell very well when you're close to home, but when you're in generic somewhere USA, and you don't have any of that local love, you really need to have it on your own merit then, and that's really where you get better feedback of what works in market and what doesn't. So having a very calculated test market plan is also a pretty amazing thing that can save you some problems faster than you think.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah, because everyone trusts the guy that's brewing the beer right in front of them, but when you just see it in the case, or you kind of have to act on faith there. Is there
like every winemaker
knows
knows this, or every wine taster, I should say, knows this, that when you go, ambiance is a big thing as well. So when you do your first trip to wherever, and you start going into the wineries, you sign up for all the wine clubs. You're like, oh, I want this, and then you get home and they don't taste the same. It's the same thing with, your beer when you're at the brewery. Everyone's like, oh, this is great, it's great. And then it's got to be good at home as well.
It's that married couple that honeymoon in the Loire, and then they show up back at home with 3 cases of Chenin Blanc that's slightly sweet, and they're like, why?
Yeah.
Why did we do this? But it tasted so good when we were at the Anjou. So what are you going to do? Is there anything you wish the people listening at home knew about Sierra Nevada?
I would say, I would love for them to look at the work we do with our sustainability practices. That's a big part of who we are, and just our, commitment to quality. I mean, we've got a very good websites, obviously, and I'd love everyone to come to our either one of our breweries and actually experience what Sierra Nevada is. It's definitely something you should see versus it's, reading it's one thing, but no, I mean, we're still brewers, I think, is the biggest thing. So there's a saying in the beer world, there's 2 types of brewers. There's someone that has to make beer and gets to sell it. And then there's a brewer that gets to make beer and has to sell it. We're definitely more of we get to make beer every day, and we are still brewers through and through, which is not said anymore about everybody.
It's still a vocation and not a job. So do you prefer people to follow you, go to your website?
Websites is a big thing, but I prefer people to go to the breweries. I mean, there's
go and ask for the beer. That's probably the best way.
Go actually to the breweries if you can and experience what we've got to offer. It's the same thing I would encourage all of your listeners to go to any of your local breweries and sort of explore what they do and why they do it, ask the questions and just learn. Not everyone can make it to Western North Carolina or to Northern California, so
we got to start where we are. Yeah. And we could do the Bryan test where you drink non-Sierra Nevada for a month and then go back and just see how they compare. Just a blind taste test there. Well, if you're listening at home and you weren't able to write that down, you're in the car, I will have a link to Sierra Nevada's website and the information to go to the tasting rooms and the show notes, just so you can easily find out where all that stuff is. I think our time is coming to a close. So before we do end, I want to just make sure, is there anything that you'd wished we'd covered or wish I'd asked that we may have missed?
I would... To me, knowing that this audience is more server-centric of an audience, more of a food handler audience, beer should have foam on it. If you are serving beers that do not, we all know we eat with our eyes first, and a lot of the times we have too much residual detergent on our glasses. Just like you polish a wine glass to a standard, if you are serving beer that is not poured correctly, it's not helping anybody.
That 5 minutes of Googling, how to have perfect glass for beer. Sure, you'll be able to find a quick thing on YouTube. I'm sure the AI and Google will pop it right to the top. It is worth the investment because it does change things.
Yeah, you'll serve way more beer and you'll get way more, you'll get a higher check average because of it. When people know you've got reliable, clean, good beer on draft, that will help everybody.
Yeah. I'm going to take your ands and buts, and I'm going to give you the 3 R's if you've never heard them. Okay. It's a Bobby G thing, and it's his hospitality thing. It's the 3 goals at any restaurant or bar. 1, you want them to reorder. So if you give them a good product, they might get a second. 2, if you did a really good job, you want them to return because you want them to come back. And if you did a great job, the golden standard, you want them to recommend your spot. So
there you go.
Clean that glass, get them to order another, get them to come back and tell their friends to come back and have some more Sierra Nevada. That's while we're here. But
That's right.
Brian, thanks for taking a few minutes out of your day. It was really a pleasure to get to meet you and talk to you. And
Thank you so
I'm ready for a
much.
beer now.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for listening. That is today's episode. Now, if you have not taken a moment to check out our website, please do. It's servesyouRightPod.com. We have past episodes and all sorts of other things there. If you want to get in touch with me, that's the place to do it. I do appreciate that you've given me your most valuable asset, your time and attention. So thank you for listening. And stay tuned. We have some really cool guests coming up. I would hate it if you missed it. Cheers.